Hello and welcome back to another exciting episode of DSLR Film Noob Podcast. This is episode 4, and I know I missed last week, but I was in DC and I didn't have good internet to put out a podcast. So I'm catching up on all the stuff that's happened on the site while I was out of town. We'll be covering this week the Magic Lantern 2.3 battery grip testing, Aputure's Into the World video contest, the Canon 6D manual with audio levels on screen, DIY audio interface ideas that I've been working on, as well as the Linco floral CFL lighting kits that are out and on sale for the next 2 days. Also, we'll be covering the test out of the Case Logic's warranty policy, as well as the new GoPro Hero 3 Black Edition, which is a pretty sweet little camera. But first, let's start off with the film reel that I posted earlier last week from Isabelle. This is a feature-length film that I've been working on for quite some time with the Dead Lantern crew, including Matt, Steve, and the rest of the cast. And we've been basically spending our weekends and weeks on this for the last, I would say, probably 6 months. We're 3/4 of the way through with the feature-length film, and we're just posting a little bit of updates along with some cool clips from the footage so you can get an idea of what the feature-length film will look like. For those of you who don't know or haven't checked my IMDb page, I film mostly feature-length horror movies, low-budget variety, and then I travel around to a lot of the conventions throughout the United States selling those horror movies and talking to fans of horror movies and so on and so forth. You can check those out on deadlantern.com if you're interested. Also, there is some of our old movies up for sale on Amazon, as well as the Dead Lantern website. Now, moving on from there, Magic Lantern 2.3, I've been testing that out with the battery grips, both on the Canon 7D as well as the T2i. In some of the earlier versions of Magic Lantern before 2.3, I was having issues with battery grips, and I was told by many that battery grips are not necessarily a good idea to use with Magic Lantern. Well, with the 2.3 release as well as the Canon alpha release for the 7D, there hasn't been any issues that I've run into, and I've been using these for about 3.5, 4 weeks now without any problems. I have had 1 or 2 times where my T2i locked up and I had to pull and remove the battery, but I almost think that's because of the memory card class that I was using, because it happened during recording. Some of the cheaper memory cards can cause you problems with Magic Lantern if you're trying to use those while you are recording higher bit rates. So keep an eye on that. That could be the source of your issue. The battery grips are extremely handy, especially if you're using a rig, because it gives you the ability to get the batteries out of the unit without having to take the camera off of the rig. A lot of the doors on these cameras are on the bottom of the camera, which means you have to dismount the camera from the adapter that it's on in order to get to the battery compartment. If you're using one of these battery grips, you can either pull the camera batteries out from the side, like on the T2i and the 5D Mark III, or on the 7D, you remove the batteries from the back, which either way is much more convenient than removing your cameras. Plus, it gives you twice the battery power, so you can run quite a bit longer with that sort of setup. Now, moving on from there, Aputure's Into the World video contest. This expires on December 21st, and they're basically looking for 1-minute submissions describing how you think the end of the world should look like. Maybe like, I don't know, some kind of surreal thing that you want to do, or somebody, writing something interesting about the end of the world, or maybe just blowing stuff up or whatever. But the contest ends December 21st, and the grand prize is up to $2,000 worth of free camera gear, including rigs, LED lighting kits, and so on. So if you're interested, you should definitely check that out. Free gear and the chance to work on your craft a little bit is always a good idea. If you see these puppets that I've got back here, I'm actually working on a submission myself for the Aperture contest. I don't know if I'll win, but it's pretty cool, and it gives me a chance to use puppets for whatever reason. That's a scientist and a pirate. Go figure. Anyway, moving on from there, the Canon 6D manual was posted, and actually, I have the Canon 6D right here. I've been testing this out for the last 4 or 5 days now, getting a feel for it. So far, I've been pretty happy with the quality of the Canon 6D. It basically feels like a smaller, lighter version of the 5D Mark III. You are missing the headphones, the focusing system isn't as snappy, and I definitely notice the burst rate difference between the two cameras. That 4.5 frames a second feels kind of clunky and slow when you're trying to shoot off a bunch of shots of something moving around. The Wi-Fi feature on here is disabled in video mode, which completely sucks. So that kind of negates the usefulness of the Wi-Fi unit that's in the head of the 6D for video shooting. Hopefully Magic Lantern will come out with a hack, hint, hint, for this camera so that in the future we can use the Wi-Fi with our tablets or our cell phones. For those of you shooting macro shots, that is still an extremely handy feature because you can set the camera down and you can control it from your phone, so you don't have to worry about introducing vibration into the camera or what have you. It's also nice if you're setting up some sort of camera trap and you want to see what the camera sees without having to run wires or whatever. The body and build of this thing feels very solid and comfortable in my hand, and otherwise I've been fairly happy with it so far. Although I keep seeing the Canon 5D Mark III dropping in price. A couple weeks ago we were seeing it at about $3,000, and this week I posted a link to an eBay seller that was selling the 5D Mark III brand new for, I believe, $2,599. Now, if there's only a $600 or $500 difference between getting the 6D and the 5D Mark III, I would say if you can afford it, save up that extra $600 and get the 5D Mark III. Sure, it's heavier and it doesn't have the Wi-Fi option, but it has headphone monitoring, better autofocus system, and in general, the 2-card system that's used on the 5D Mark III is a lot more handy than the single card that's on the 6D. The single card isn't too bad, but it is nice to switch back and forth. Plus, when you are running Magic Lantern on your 5D Mark III, you can install it on the SD card and then use the CF card for capture, which makes it pretty convenient. Easily remove that card and you're back to running the camera regular, and put the card back in again, and now you are running Magic Lantern off the SD. The 6D is still a pretty decent camera, but if it's not $1,500 less than the 5D Mark III, I think a lot of people will end up just jumping past this unless they enable Wi-Fi in video mode. If they enable Wi-Fi in video mode, this camera could be a hell of a lot better for videographers. If you're a photographer and you're looking for something for portraits or landscapes, you'll still be pretty happy with this camera. The autofocus system, even though it only has one cross type, that cross type works pretty well. In the limited amount of time I've had to test with the 6D, I've been getting really good results in low light with the focusing system. I usually just set this up for center focus point only, and then focus and move the camera to frame the shot. That saves me the hassle of waiting on some of the slower autofocus points that are on the rest of that kind of diamond-shaped pattern that's on the 6D. Overall, the 6D, I will be doing a full review of it and comparing it to the Canon 5D Mark III in a couple weeks whenever I get a chance to put that together. But for now, I am still messing around with the 6D, and it isn't too bad. Not quite as exciting of a camera offering as I would have liked to have seen. Now, moving on from there, I did post an article about the DIY audio interface I'm working on. And I know a lot of you have chimed in on that iRig pre-hack that I posted earlier, and that's extremely handy for turning that into an XLR adapter for your camera. But I would like to see something that's in that price range that offers you 2 channels of audio inputs, and the ability to independently control the volume on those. Gives you XLR inputs, 3.5 millimeter inputs, and gives you a 3.5 millimeter stereo output to your camera. add some gain to that, and I think a box like that in the $30 to $40 price range would be pretty sweet. I know a couple of people have mentioned that, I think it's called the USB Pre. Anyway, the USB Pre, it's kind of not really designed for being used with the camera. It's got sort of dirty audio inputs that kind of introduce a little bit of noise. It doesn't have a proper output, so you have to use kind of an adapter or what have you, and it's not really an awesome choice for audio adapting to your DSLR. You might be able to modify that, and I'm looking into that as well, and if you can, that might be a cleaner solution than trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with my own audio interface. I've got the parts coming in right now for that audio interface that I posted about, and once I get it kind of put together and get the diagrams drawn out and test everything out, I'll post some more on that and let you guys know how it's going. Thanks everybody for all of your input on that, because you guys help me decide how I design that, and possibly that might even end up in the NOOB store if I can get it working properly. The way I am thinking of this right now is to offer up different options for XLR inputs, 1/8" inputs, and 3.5mm jacks on the unit, depending on what your needs are. So that way you can just order one and customize it with whatever selections you want and then have that show up. I'm ordering a laser cutter to start on that project. Hopefully that'll show up pretty soon, and it gives me a pretty good excuse to mess with one of those cheap $400 laser cutters from China. Hopefully I'm not wasting my money on that laser cutter, but it'll be fun to play around with anyway, and maybe I can draw designs on things or whatever. Now moving on from there, I just posted this today actually, was the Linco Floral CFL kit. I mentioned earlier last week that there was a sale on that. That sale actually ends in 2 days by the time this podcast posts, and it is a really good deal actually. The kit is basically 3 of their floral heads, which hold 6 CFL bulbs each, including the soft boxes that go with that, and very nice 8 and 10 foot stands, along with one of those stands having a boom arm that gives you about 15 feet of reach, which is pretty nice. Overall, I think the entire output of the kit is around 4,500 watts equivalent, which is a decent amount of light. The Linco floral kits are a lot better build than some of the cheaper ones out there. The retail price for it normally is somewhere in the range of $1,000. But right now they are offering it on sale for $408. I don't know why the 8 is in there. It's kind of an odd number. But anyway, that's a really good deal on this kit. The light bulbs alone that come with the kit would set you back about $200 depending on where you bought them. And the hardware and stuff is miles ahead of what you get with some of the other lighting kits, the cheap ones from Cowboy Studios and Alonzo and some of those other offerings that you see on Amazon and on eBay. Now, the one thing I will note is that the gray handle on the back of the unit is not as strong as some of the cheapo 4-light kits that I've seen before. Normally those have like little mesh gears that go together and keep that locked in place so that once you snug it down, it can't move around. Well, when you're pivoting on that, there isn't any gears on the Linco offering for the floral heads. So when you tighten that down, you really have to snug it up pretty tight in order to get it to hold the light in place. It's not a horrible deal, but it is a little bit of an issue, and I could see that being a point of failure down the road if you're using these kits a lot and adjusting that point quite a bit. Now, going from there to testing of the warranty with the Case Logic. I've been using this Case Logic SLR C-202 bag for somewhere in the range of 4 years. The bag's held up quite well, and it's done a really good job. In fact, I have the bag right here. This bag is very solid. It's got a nice rubberized bottom to it that keeps it from getting water inside there. It protects my camera gear, keeps it from getting wet in the rain, and it's fairly well padded. It has enough room to hold 2 lenses as well as some audio gear if you're traveling light. I think this case is a pretty decent deal, and supposedly Case Logic offers 25-year warranty on the parts that are associated with this bag. Well, mine is starting to come apart right here at the strap, as well as this little zipper area back here. So hopefully Case Logic will stand behind their warranty on this bag. If that's the case and the warranty process goes smoothly, that makes this a really great value. 25 years of service, and they'll possibly replace or repair your bag. That's pretty nice. I am submitting the warranty paperwork for that on Monday, as I didn't have time last week. Once that goes through and I get contact from them, I'll kind of document how that goes and how smoothly the process is working with Case Logic, and let you guys know how good a service I get from the company. If it's great, that means it'll probably be great if you run into a problem, which means buying Case Logic cases might be a good idea. Or if it goes horribly, just know that you spent that money on the case and you might not get any customer service in the back end. I will keep you posted on that. Now, I did receive this GoPro Hero 3 Black Edition, and I've been messing around with this quite a bit. This shoots at 2.7K, which is roughly a third more framing space than 1080p, which means after you shoot with this handheld, you can stabilize it using the warp stabilizer tool in Premiere and basically get a really awesome tiny Steadicam. I've been testing that feature out quite a bit, and it seems to work pretty well. I'll be posting a tutorial on how to do that probably next week sometime when I get a chance to finish filming that. But right now I am testing this out in low light. I'm messing around with the time-lapse features that are available on the Hero 3. One of the disappointing things that I will note is that the Wi-Fi app for your cell phone isn't actually going to be released until December 14th, which isn't too far away, but it's a little bit irritating when you get a product and you have to wait for one of the key features to be available for you to use. Once that comes out, I will be testing it with the Hero 3, and I'll let you know how well it works. I should have some demo pictures of the ability for the GoPro 3 to shoot in low light compared to the T2i. I've been kind of testing those two out, as the T2i is kind of a threshold. It's a bigger, older camera model, and this is a tiny new camera model. So hopefully if this can keep up with the 1600 ISO quality that you get from the T2i, it will be a pretty decent little baby camera to carry around. I'll also be posting the Steadicam stuff. I'll let you know when I get to that. This thing is pretty sweet, and I am very excited to mess around with it. Now, moving on from there, a few of you mentioned that you wanted to use the headphone jack on the iRig Pre as a headphone monitoring output. Remember, that jack is passive. It does not have any electronics connected to it at all. When it's normally set up without the hack, the cable just plugs into the headphone output of your iPhone or iOS device and uses the output of that to feed back to the jack on the device, which means you can't actually plug your headphones into there without having a power amp behind it like the iPhone or the iPad or whatever. That's why it's basically useless for DSLR application. The hack allows you to use that as an output for your camera and just eliminates some of the extra wires and what have you, makes it easier to plug into your DSLR. So keep that in mind. I know a lot of you have been writing in asking if there was a way to turn that into a headphone output. You could possibly put a Y splitter on there, feed one part of the Y to your camera and feed the other connection to a headphone amplifier. But that's not really monitoring the audio that's being recorded by the camera. That's actually monitoring just the microphone output. You would have to also carry around an extra bit of junk with that probably won't be as convenient as the iRig Pre just plugged directly into your camera. If you're using a T2i, you should definitely check out that SESCOM cable. I'll post a link to that in the show notes below. Or if you're using a 5D Mark III, then you have headphone outs and you don't have to worry about it. Either way, there are some other options for you, so think about those instead of trying to turn that jack into a multi-purpose item. that's all I've got for this week on DSLR Film Noob podcast. As always, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next week.